So those 4 free Reverb plugins would probably be the best ones you can find out there right now. Hey guys, my name is Lucas and welcome back to my studio. So in this video I will show you the 4 free best Reverb plugins that I've found on the internet. So I am currently working on another intro song right now that I can also use in the background of my videos. And I thought, okay, it's time to really make this sound good, so I wanted to find some good reverbs. And I really want the Valhalla Vintage Room reverb, but I don't want to buy it right now because, you know, $50, it's also expensive, so I want to leave that for now. And I thought, okay, I want to find some free reverb plugins and share them with you guys. So I found 4 plugins and I will link everyone down in the description down below so you can also check them out yourself. But yeah, it's really great weather outside today, so let's just make this video, get it over with, and let's get started. Okay guys, so here we are in FL Studio. So this is the song that I was talking about earlier, the one that I want to use in the background of my videos and so on. And the 4 different reverb plugins has some different things they can do. So let us just play the song and then we want to apply the different reverbs to different parts of the song. So it's nothing special yet, only the bass and the kick has been mixed separately, they haven't even been sidechained yet. This is the bass. And if we use the first reverb on the bass, and yes, I know it's a bass, but still it needs a bit of reverb. So the first one is from Tal, it's called Tal Reverb 4 plugin. So this one is really great, it's really simple, and again, I've linked it down in the description down below. So the first thing that we notice is the main area. You can determine the size. And you can also determine the diffusion. You can also determine the delay, you know, from when the original sound is played until the wet signal, the reverb, is going to be active. And I think for low frequencies we need a bit of delay just to make sure that we can actually hear our thing. So let's go with 48 milliseconds. Modulation is kind of, you know, the chorus effect that the reverb gets. But again, it's a bass, so let's just reduce the size. You can also make a low and high cut, which means that everything below 102 Hz will disappear, or 29 Hz, and a high cut. But because this bass is not only sub, I want to make a low cut at around 120 maybe. Let's go 108, and let's make a high cut at around 10,000 Hz. And then we can also increase and decrease the dry and wet signal. So the next one I want to talk about is also from Tal, it's called Tal Reverb 2. And I think this plugin fits more to a lush kind of sound, so I want it on this sound. So let's go again to Tal Reverb 2. So there's a bit more to look at right here. We have a high shelf, a mid peak, and a low shelf. And if we find an equalizer, this basically means that the high shelf is controlling like this, the peak is controlling like this, and you can kind of set the range for the peak like this. And for the low shelf, it's like this. And you can set, you know, the frequencies for all of them. So this is a very lost sound and it has some high frequencies to it. So we want the high shelf around 5000 Hertz maybe. And let's see if we can find any problems with the mids. I would say around here. So the good thing about this is that you can take the peak. For instance, this is around 1300 Hertz and you can just pull it down. And it has not a lot of flow frequency, so let's just leave that where it is now. The room size needs to be big because it's a lost sound. And also the great thing about this one is that you have stereo width and stereo input, which means that if you turn the width all the way down, you will hear that the wet, the reverb will go into the mono signal. And also if you turn off the stereo input, it basically does something similar, and you can also control the width of your reverb. And again, we have the pre-delay, which determines how long it takes for the reverb to come in when the dry signals has started. So also a very, very great and simple plugin. So the next one, I want to apply that to the piano. And this plugin was made by Voxengo and it's called School Verb. It looks kind of old and kind of muddy, but it's actually really great. So again, we have the pre-delay and it's a piano, so let's just set it to around 20. And the space is kind of how big your room is, not how long it takes for the reverb to decay. And let's set the time to around 1.2 maybe. And again, we have the width knobs, which determines, mono or stereo. But for a piano, I really like it to be very wide. Not too wide, but very wide. We also have the damping, and the damping kind of determines how long it takes for the signal to dry out after it has passed away from the time. And you can really adjust it by the low cut and the high cut. And if we pull this trigger all the way up to 21 kilohertz, you can really hear the high frequencies fading out slower. And if we pull it down, you can't even hear them. And damping is typically what makes a sound natural. There isn't a lot of low, so let's just keep it there. We also have an equalizer. We have the lows, the mids, and the high frequencies. And of course, we also have the dry wet module right here, where we can turn off the dry signal. So I really like this plugin for reverbs on piano. And the final one is going on to the Epic Supersoft that I've made in Massive X. And this one is probably the most, you can say, advanced. It's really not that advanced, but it looks really nice. It's called Olive River, and it looks like this. It can be a bit hard to understand when you first take a look at it, but let's just go through it step by step. So again, we have the pre-delay and the width, which we've also had in the previous plugins. The pre-delay determines how long it takes for the reverb to step in after the dry signal. And I think that for a very big sound like this, that is going like a pad, we really want a bigger pre-delay, because then we will be able to hear the reverb. And the width needs to go a bit down, I guess. And also the great thing about this plugin is that you can double click, or you can just click at the numbers and press in whatever you want to press. Next up, we have the variation types. We have the early reflection and the reverb variation. the early reflection kind of determines, you know, the very, very first tip tops of the reverb sound before the main sound of the reverb steps in. So let's see what we got here. And again, early reflection is kind of hard to find in the sound. And the reverb variation is kind of a predetermined reverb that you can choose, and then you can always adjust it later. But let's just go with variation 1, and we have the decay time here that we can play around with. Let's go 1.3. We also have the room size, and again, this is how big your room is. And because this is an Epic Supersaw, we just want a huge room. We also have the diffusion. We also have the damping as we had earlier, and this is the high damp. And here you can really hear the high frequencies, and here you really can't. And this is kind of how much of the damping you want. We also have a chorus section to this reverb, and this is kind of the mod envelope for the mod depth and the mod speed. And the mod depth determines how much chorus you want, and this is how fast you want it. And this is applied to the reverb. So if we turn off the dry signal, and sometimes this is actually pretty nice, because if you have a huge sound like this Supersaw, it can be hard to actually hear the reverb. So if you just put a slight pitch or tune to it, it really makes everything stand out. And again, we have an equalizer. We have the low shelf, the high shelf, and the peak, just as we had it in the Tal Reverb 2. So if we turn the peak all the way up, I notice a problem in the sound around 800 Hz, so let's just turn that back down. And the low cut, it doesn't really matter because I've already equalized the Epic Supersaw a bit. So for now, we only have the high and the peaks. And again, you can also kind of control the highs with the damping. We also have the reverb and the wet module. So this was actually kind of confusing for me in the beginning, but the wet determines how much signal is going through your mix. So if we mute the dry, and the reverb is kind of in percentage how much tail the overall reverb has. So it has nothing to do with the decay time, but more to do with the whole as one. So the further up you got the knob or the slider, the more reverb tail you'll get out of all of it. So I guess this is really, really nice if you really want to make fine adjustments in the end. So yeah, you really have a lot of options with this one, but you really need to know what you're doing with it. So just play around with it. And again, all of these Reverb plugins has been linked in the description down below. Okay guys, so those were my top 4 free Reverb plugins for your music program. I hope you liked the video, and if you did, consider subscribing, because I will make tons of more like this in the future. Also, if you have any questions about the plugins, comment down below. If the links aren't working, comment down below, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.